Iran and China have signed a 25-year strategic partnership, which marks an extraordinary milestone in the relationship between the two nations. So what exactly is in this roadmap? What does it mean for the two nations? What does it mean for the world? And how is this deal being perceived by rivals such as the United States? Let's take a closer look. I'm Richard Medhurst, and you're watching the Communiqué. Officially dubbed the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, Iran and China finally inked the 25-year roadmap in Tehran on March 27, 2021, with the foreign ministers of both countries at the ceremony. Iran's foreign minister, Jawad Zarif, alongside China's Wang Yi, heralded China as being a friend for difficult times and underscored the importance of the friendship between the two countries. Now, the origins of this deal go back to 2016 when Iran's President Rouhani and China's President Xi Jinping began talks about increasing partnership between the two ancient civilizations who've enjoyed bilateral ties for 2,000 years. It's worth pointing out that this strategic partnership between China and Iran is not a clear-cut treaty of sorts like some people imagine, but more of a broader roadmap for the next 25 years, which seeks to strengthen cooperation between the two nations and their economies, their energy sectors, military, their international relations, and also in the fields of education, culture, tourism, and much more. It's quite a remarkable step in beefing up ties between the two countries, and both nations stand to benefit greatly from this strategic partnership. China will invest heavily in Iran's infrastructure, specifically in its manufacturing sector, communications, transportation, and in exchange, Iran will provide a steady supply of oil. It's important to note that China is Iran's largest trading partner. China is also the world's largest importer of oil, surpassing the United States in 2017. Although China leads the world in investments in clean energy and renewables, its enormous energy requirements mean that it needs a steady supply of crude. And that's exactly what Iran can provide. What makes this equally advantageous for Iran is the fact that Iran can not only offload the oil that it produces, but also get something directly in exchange for it in the form of direct investments and development of its infrastructure. Remember, Iran is the world's fourth largest producer of oil and has been cut off from the global market due to United States sanctions. Both its banking sector and its energy sector have been placed under embargo, making it difficult to not only sell the oil, but also engage in trade and finance, even if one were able to sell it in the first place. This partnership with China provides an alternate avenue for Iran to secure the development of its infrastructure while also providing China with a way to secure its demand for oil. It's a crucial step forward in rebuffing the alliance between the two powers, and also an important milestone in the realm of international relations and Asia's geopolitical standing. Now, while some reports quote a figure of around $400 billion being invested by China in Iran, this appears to stem from a draft that appeared in the New York Times in 2020. That's not to say that it's not necessarily true. As a matter of fact, it doesn't seem an unlikely endeavor over the course of 25 years. But just to say that the partnership is more of a roadmap that expands investment, research and development, and mutual cooperation in a large number of fields. And it's not just about a one-time sum or a one-time figure. It's a much bigger deal than that. This partnership will see Iran integrated into China's Belt and Road Initiative, which China officially announced and adopted in 2013 as part of its foreign policy. The Belt and Road Initiative is essentially a revival of the Silk Road. This is the infamous network of trade routes that connected East and West, running all the way from China to Syria to Greece. These trade routes were not just by land, but also maritime. And China's Belt and Road Initiative seeks to bring about a modern adaptation of the ancient Silk Road, with maritime and land bridges going all the way from East Asia to West Asia to Africa to Europe. The United States, 2 months into Joe Biden's presidency, still has not rejoined the Iran nuclear deal, also known as the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. This agreement from 2015, which sought to limit Iran's nuclear program in exchange for unfreezing of assets and sanctions relief, was torn up by Donald Trump, who left the agreement in 2018. Now, the reimposition of sanctions in an attempt to isolate Iran on the international stage has brought on huge amounts of suffering, austerity, and anguish. Foreign investments, trade, commerce, finance, and international developmental projects have been quashed by the United States' efforts to malign Iran. During this time, however, Iran has found the ability to develop its own vaccines, its own defense industry, to innovate and make do with little and learn how to survive. The ingenuity of the Iranian people, combined with the willingness of other maligned countries like Syria, China, Russia, Venezuela, to cooperate with each other, has led to a shift in the balance of power. The United States and its aggression has created new realignments that are now seeing these countries actually grow stronger and create new opportunities which might not have presented themselves otherwise. Not to take away, of course, from the brutality of sanctions, which are considered by many to be akin to siege warfare. But all this is to say that there is definitely a silver lining to be found here. The United States and its European allies, in trying to isolate and divide Iran and others, have actually ended up bringing these countries closer together and reinforcing their alliances. The significance of this strategic partnership between Iran and China is not only economically beneficial, but also a seismic shift in geopolitical terms. Joining me from Bangkok is author and journalist Pepe Escobar, editor-at-large for the Asia Times. Thanks for taking the time, Pepe. It's a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thank you.
So, Pepe, China has signed some of these strategic partnerships with other countries in the past as part of its general foreign policy and diplomacy. What makes this one with Iran so special? Why does this one stand out in particular?
Well, this is the solidification via a deal that was quoted as a roadmap, in fact, including by Iranian Foreign Minister Zarif, that it's the Belt and Road Initiative as applied to Southwest Asia. That's why it's so important. It's groundbreaking. I was writing about this only a few hours ago. That is as important in historical terms as the very close relationship between the China and Iran, Persia at the time, civilizations during the Yuan dynasty in the 13th century. They are back as they were at the time, with a very close relationship. And this has been in the making for quite a while, of course. There was a lot of back and forth, diplomatic meetings, high-level meetings. It is a roadmap. Of course, we don't have details first of all, because it's very long-term. It's a 25-year long meeting, a deal, including everything in terms of trade, connectivity, and investment to how much China is going to get in terms of oil and gas from Iran and investing in the uranium energy system as well. It's very comprehensive, of course, so the details will come up little by little, of course. I heard there is some resistance inside Iran about it, which is, of course, considering the magnitude of this deal, is perfectly understandable. But in terms of being a win-win deal, it's absolutely perfect for the Iranian economy in the long run, and in terms of securing a national problem, a problem of national security for China, which is their supply of energy. So obviously, you can imagine how this was received in the Beltway, of course. What I heard is the usual linked to the maximum pressure campaign to some so-called analysts in the Beltway that they think that they know anything about Iran, when in fact they don't, saying that now we lost Iran for good. But that's a joke. We cannot take these people seriously, obviously. The most important thing is that there are so many processes that will be driven or influenced by this deal in terms of the whole connectivity of Southwest Asia to Belt and Road, to the International Transportation Corridor, the INSTC, to the Russian vision of Greater Eurasia, that it's still too early for us to imagine the repercussions all over Southwest Asia of what is, in fact, a major game-changing strategic partnership.
And, regarding the timing of this deal, we just had these talks in Alaska, and, you wrote in the Asia Times that the timing of this deal is quite historic. Can you elaborate on that for us?
Absolutely. The timing was a thing of beauty, in fact. And I have been following everything that has been happening, even before Alaska, starting with the virtual Quad meeting. So I wrote 4 columns in sequence. They are completely interlinked. And we didn't know, in fact, that after the end of the Wang Yi, Sergei Lavrov meeting in Guilin, which was early in the week, where they were discussing details of the Russia-China strategic partnership, considering what had happened in Alaska. And obviously before that, the Quad. We didn't know that the China-Iran strategic partnership deal would be signed only a few days later, on a Saturday. So obviously, the timing was kept extremely secret by Wang Yi himself, of course, and by the Iranian leadership. So it all came together because this involves, most of all, and this is something that it's never enough to stress to an international audience, in fact. The only 3 sovereigns in the planet right now are Russia, China, and Iran. I'm talking about major powers or near major powers. We could include Cuba, which is a sovereign in itself in an extraordinary story. But the breadth and reach of Cuba, you cannot compare to Russia, China, or even Iran in terms of areas of influence. So these are the 3 major sovereign powers in the world that not by accident are listed as threats to the U.S. in the U.S. national security strategy. And the fact that in only 2 weeks, you have them getting closer and closer via strategic partnerships in the case of Russia, China, and then in the case of China and Iran. That's what makes it really a game-changing moment in 21st century politics. Anything that happens from now on, it will never, the previous status quo is dead completely. Now, the declining hegemon, as we know it, will have to deal with this interconnection between Russia, Iran, and China. And that's why the whole thing now it's a completely different ballgame.
So, the United States, they've been trying to isolate Iran for decades now on the international stage. How does this deal play into the context of sanctions, of the JCPOA, which the United States still hasn't re-entered?
Well, it is a game changer as well, because now it's clear, including for the other members of the JCPOA, that Russia and China back Iran 110%. And on top of it, there is a strategic partnership involved in terms of China's support. And sooner rather than later, we're going to have a Russian strategic support as well, because in fact, members of the Iranian parliament are already talking about a Russia-Iran strategic partnership deal, which will be sealed eventually, in the short term, in fact. And obviously, within the P5+1 part of the JCPOA, we know since Vienna in 2015, I was there covering at the time, that Russia and China support the Iranian position. This is even more solidified now. We know that Europeans are dying for this thing to restart. And they know that the only realistic way for JCPOA to be back is if we are back to what was decided in Vienna in 2015. So, and that leaves, once again, the isolated exceptionals. And we don't know. In fact, they don't. This is according to, I talk about this with my sources in the Beltway virtually every week. They all tell me the same thing. This administration has no idea what to do about the JCPOA. They don't have a policy. They don't have a vision. And of course, they don't have a strategy. Their strategy will be, okay, let's raise the pressure on Iran a little bit. We impose a few extra conditions, and then maybe we'll go back to JCPOA, and maybe we'll alleviate some of the sanctions. Well, this is not diplomacy. This is not foreign policy, as we know. But this is where we're at the moment. So Okay, we heard a few rumbles these past few days that they would be willing to, let's alleviate some sanctions to the tune of $20 billion in the short to medium term. But this is just a rumor. There's not a proposition on the table yet.
So, I mean, do you expect Iran to be able to bypass, so to speak, U.S. sanctions in a sense, because now they have a way to offload some of their oil output with China and get something in return for that? Is that an accurate assessment?
Well, bypassing U.S. sanctions is an extremely complicated process for the firms who are doing it. If they are Iranian firms, if they are multinational companies, if they are European firms with multinational connections, even if they are Chinese firms. If you use the US dollar, you are in big trouble. If you bypass the US dollar, if you use some sort of trading mechanism bypassing the US dollar, or if you do in your own currencies, that's a completely different story. If you use barter, if you are paid in anything apart from US dollars, no problem. This is something that has been happening for quite a while, right? So this is the way to go, I would say. In terms of using SWIFT, again, which is the heart of the matter, in terms of sanctions being, sanctions are basically gone, which is something that is not going to happen because it involves the US Congress as well. So I don't see any, feasible scenario ahead where Iran would be back, or Iranian firms would be back to using SWIFT for transactions with the West. With China is a completely different story because you can use reals, you can use yuan, you can use barter mechanisms, you name it. And now, within the scope of the new strategic deal, there are so many possibilities, right? Which, of course, have been discussed before the signing of the deal.
Pepe Escobar, thank you so much for your time and your brilliant reporting. It's a pleasure having you on.
All right. Okay. Cheers. Bye-bye. Thank you.
We'll be right back after this short break. One area that is clearly set to benefit from this partnership with China is Iran's energy sector. Iran is one of the world's largest producers of oil, and its economy and energy needs also rely heavily on oil exports. One of the main staples of the nuclear deal signed in 2015 was to lift the embargo on its oil sector. Following the lifting of sanctions, according to OPEC, oil exports from Iran increased by 1 million barrels within a year and doubled within 2 years. When Donald Trump left the deal in 2018, he reimposed sanctions targeting Iran's oil sector specifically, among its banking sector and others. Now, this new partnership with China provides Iran with an alternative way to export its oil and to get something in return too, oil, in exchange for infrastructure building. China is Iran's largest trading partner. Iran has a lot of oil, and China needs it. China is powerful enough to actually stand up to U.S. sanctions, to the point where it's willing to engage with Iran in trade. It's willing to engage with its allies in defiance of the United States. Another example of why a strategic partnership like this is so important, if we look at the destruction brought on by U.S. sanctions, many companies that had been excited to invest in Iran were forced to abandon their projects and leave for fear of being fined, jailed, or sanctioned themselves by the U.S. Treasury. One such company is the Swedish communications giant Ericsson, which sought to develop Iran's 5G network. Now, this project was ultimately abandoned and will now be picked up by China's Huawei. This is again a huge advantage of having a partner like China, who is not afraid to stand up to U.S. sanctions and can invest in developing the infrastructures of its allies. Now, it's interesting to see the reactions brought on by the announcement of this deal. When asked about it, this is what President Joe Biden had to say.
How concerning is the emerging partnership between China and Iran?
I've been concerned about that for a year.
You can see how the question was framed to begin with, that it's meant to keep pushing this xenophobic propaganda, this fear-mongering about Iran. Are you concerned, the reporter asks, and Biden replies that he is. That's weird. I didn't realize that it's his place to be concerned. Is Joe Biden the president of Iran? Is he the president of China? It's not really his business. And indeed, in the headlines of the Western press, one can also see an explicit admission that U.S. interests are at stake. Instead of analyzing how this strategic partnership can be mutually beneficial for both China and Iran, the mainstream media and the West portray it as a disaster because it weakens U.S. influence, with some pundits even invoking the Bush-era nomenclature and dubbing it the new axis of evil. They can't frame it as two countries engaging in commerce and partnership. No, they have to frame it as a threat because it weakens U.S. influence. But when we talk about weakening U.S. influence, what does that mean exactly? What is U.S. influence? Support for Israel and Saudi Arabia? Illegally occupying Syria and Iraq? Starving people with sanctions? Colonizing them in the name of democracy and then refusing to leave for decades? No one wants that. So maybe a decrease in U.S. influence, and by extension British and European influence, is a good thing. You know, the West has done enough damage to West Asia and the Middle East. So next time you see a headline about U.S. influence being weakened, what they really mean is the United States' ability to sanction Iran, to starve its people and isolate it on the world stage in order to effectuate Washington, D.C.'s foreign policy objectives. Just a few days later, on March 31st, Biden also announced a plan to invest $2.3 trillion into U.S. infrastructure. It felt a lot like he was trying to compensate for the recent announcement by China and Iran. He mentioned China 6 times in his remarks and actually pointed out correctly that China is out-investing the United States and outdoing them in virtually every sector.
It's the largest American jobs investment since World War II. It will create millions of jobs, good-paying jobs. It will grow the economy, make us more competitive around the world, promote our national security interest, and put us in a position to win the global competition with China. Clean energy, the competition with China in particular. Who doesn't think we have to improve our infrastructure? They know China and other countries are eating our lunch. That's what competition between America and China and the rest of the world is all about.
Now, the only reason the Western media and politicians are making a fuss about the strategic partnership between China and Iran is because they weren't included in it. I mean, just imagine for a second if the United Kingdom or France or Germany had struck a 25-year partnership deal with another country. Would anyone in Western media be talking about this in the same manner? They would pat themselves on the back for being such great diplomats and merchants. But when China and Iran engage in a partnership, they demonize them. Or, for example, when Iran and Venezuela trade fuel and gold with each other, the United States pirates their ships and sells them off. And the United Kingdom freezes Venezuela's assets, their gold in London. This is how Western powers operate. They're a mafia. They say you either give us a cut or we're going to take it by force. The United States feels threatened by China's growing power. And this is also why Trump, he went on and banned Huawei or threatened to ban TikTok unless they agreed to sell to a U.S. firm. That's not a free and fair market like they claim to uphold. That's trying to crush the competition and make sure that Silicon Valley and American companies, and by extension, the national security state, maintain their monopoly over the big tech industry. This Belt and Road Initiative, this revival of the ancient Silk Road, also poses a huge threat to the United States. It's a major point of contention in the Cold War between China and the United States. The Anglo-American way of doing things is to invade, occupy, to kill the local population and steal its resources. Just look at Iraq, just look at Afghanistan, look at Syria, look at the opium wars with China, the CIA and MI6 coup in Iran. The people in Asia and Africa and Latin America, they know all too well how Western imperialism corrupts and destroys their countries. The Chinese way of doing things is different. China is not sending its armies to invade the Middle East. China is not putting 800 military bases across the globe. China is seeking to engage with other countries based on mutual respect. You know, people talk about China colonizing other countries because it enters into strategic partnerships with them. Okay, well, hold on a second. I didn't see any Chinese bases in Syria stealing oil or occupying Iraq for 20 years or starving the people of Venezuela with sanctions. That's the United States. That's Britain. They're the ones who plunder. They're the ones who come and invade and refuse to leave and murder the local population. China engages with other countries based on a mutual understanding, based on mutual cooperation and respect. And I think I know which any rational person would prefer. These attempts by Britain, America, and Europe to isolate Iran and its allies on the world stage will ultimately prove to be futile. China and Iran, these are two ancient civilizations. They're not 300 years old. They're thousands of years old, with rich, vibrant cultures and histories. The two nations, they've enjoyed bilateral ties and friendship for millennia. The signing of this strategic partnership is just a modern manifestation and continuation of that very relationship. I think Iran's leader, Ali Khamenei, put it best in February when he said, the post-US era has begun. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Richard Medhurst, and this is The Communiqué.